went to Siege's.
It's a hot topic.
That's a hot topic, and I can understand completely. So, I've got a slide deck here, but honestly, guys, this is more of an open discussion too. So if you've got questions or anything, hit me up, even if it's not up on the slides. Just ask me. If I don't know the answer, I'll lie to you. That way you think that you got an answer. And then...
Well, you lie confidently?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do it really well. And then we can have an AE come and talk to you about it. So just in a quick introduction, I know half the people in here, of the four. So I'm with Davenport Group. We're a big Dell vendor, so you'll see a lot of Dell guys hanging around with us. We've got some of the new Dell laptops. So I tell you that because a little bit of this is going to be skewed towards a little bit of Dell networking. But in reality, the presentation, you can take it across whether it's HP, Cisco, Brocade, Juniper, it doesn't matter. It's the same ideas happening. Most of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, could you go out and do most of the stuff today? Yes. Would you want to do most of the stuff today? Probably not unless you have a specific need. But a year from now, you're going to probably be seriously really looking at it. So we're kind of really wanting to get y'all's brains going and juices moving towards it, because when we get a year from now, y'all's budget cycles are probably a year out, 2 years out. This is the stuff that as your refreshes are coming up, you want to really start thinking about this stuff and start talking about it, because it's going to change the way you do everything now. Open networking, so there's really two types of terms. I want to clear up these two terms out there. There's open networking and there's virtualized networking. The two are not the same. And this slide deck came from Paul Clifford, and he has them completely confused. He thinks they're the same, but they're not. So I will tell you, so of course we had to have a Gartner slide for some reason. Dell is sitting in their thing, and really the big thing is they have, you'll notice all their big switches now have this dash on the end of it, which means basically that, oh there we go, laser. It's open network. What that really means to you guys is that I can install Linux on these servers, on these switches. So they're kind of what they call, they're white boxing the thing. So normally you would just run the Dell DNOS, Dell Network OS, but you can run straight up Linux off these boxes. The big ones that are doing it right now is Cumulus and Big Switch are probably the two big ones that are doing this. What that allows and opens up for you guys, if you want to do it, it's not a really huge market right now, but it's kind of in between. People are still trying to figure it out on where it's going to go. Is they load the Linux on these switches, and it allows developers to basically be able to have intelligence at the switch level. So they can actually open and create ports on the fly. So they can, and it's more than just turn on a port and making it VLAN 2. Right now they can actually turn it from being a switch port to a trunk port to being a router port, all within Linux command scripting. So they can basically, in like a developer situation, or let's say you're a Facebook entity type situation when you've got a website and you're bringing stuff up and down, you can actually switch out the ports and what they do based upon what's going on in the environment. Really cool stuff. It's more, we see this more at the higher level type of G500s and stuff where they got developers that are really pushing the limits. But it's out there and it's something good for y'all to know. Most of these guys are also doing something very similar, Pluralist and Fusion. And then OpenStack is probably the one that y'all probably heard the most of. They're not really doing it as much as they're kind of working with the Cumulus and the big switches to kind of work together. So if you had a multi-tenant thing, now where I'm seeing some of this in governance is we're starting to see some of the counties and the cities and stuff that are starting to think about, our IT should be almost like a cloud for all of our operations. So instead of me just providing IT services, which you still are, I'm going to be almost a multi-tenancy cloud vendor. So I'll segment off each one of my groups so that my police department's environment is completely different than my DSS environment. That's completely different than, so that all of them have these Chinese firewalls. And that's kind of what you can start getting with the big switches and the Cumuluses. You can start Chinese firewalling off this stuff. Any questions there? Makes sense? Like I said, this one here, cool stuff if you're the type of person that wants to get into it, but not really up my alley. So network virtualization is probably the one that most of you guys are probably hearing a lot about, right? It's the one that's really making the news. So really what I want to kind of go into is some of the things that really be thinking about. Network capacity. So think about it, right? The first thing that we all had to deal with when we were doing our data centers was what? Compute, right? CPU cycles. And we were running 486 and lower Pentiums. We were always running at 80% utilization and 90% utilization. Right? We were like, what, are you kidding me? I'll never be able to do anything more than this Exchange database is killing my CPU cycles, right? But Intel fixed that. Right? Now, look at the chips you got now on your servers. 18 cores. They're running like 1%, 2% CPU utilization most times. So we virtualized. And now we don't even think about it. I remember when I first got into virtualization, I was like, I would never virtualize my database or my Exchange. Who would do that? It would kill my system. I could never run 2 Exchange systems. Now I see people running 75, 50, 100 VMs on a single host. Right? So the CPU is taken care of. Next came memory. Memory was the big issue. Well, now I got fast CPUs, but I don't have enough memory. Well, now we all know RAM is dirt cheap. We're putting ridiculous amounts of RAM on hosts. That's gone. Now that we became storage was the issue, right? I don't even need to tell you about SSDs and how big the hard drives are getting. You know, in a single 2U capacity, we're getting 100 terabytes. It's ridiculous. So the next big one that was kind of slowing everybody up is networking. How long have we had 1 gig networking to our desktop? Right? 10 gig networking just started coming around. Right? Jason, you just got it 3 years ago a little bit, and even that was kind of problematic at time, right? So 10 gig was kind of iffy and stuff. Now we're seeing 25, 50, and 100 gig. That's coming. And I'm not talking years down the road, it's today. 10 gig is going to be the price of 1 gig by probably middle of next year. So you'll be running 10 gig everywhere. I've got a few customers that have been trying to figure out how they can run 10 gig to their desktop. It seems crazy, but it's cool though, right? 25 and 50 gig is insane. But I can guarantee you some of those places like you, Jason, or Toby, y'all got those fiber between your admin and your jail cell, or you in case your fire department, you'll be running 100 gig on that, no issue. And it's not going to be that expensive. The cards are coming. That was probably the last piece. Dell has come out with the new switches. I think HP has come out with them. I think Cisco's the one that's kind of holding back because they came out with their own 100 gig a while ago with their own connectors, and they're pretty ticked that everyone's come out with an open standard called the QSFP 28. But they'll switch over. They probably already have. So it's coming. So kind of talking about that. So we got all this thing, so how do we kind of piece it together? So now we got compute capacity. And so now we virtualized our data center. How many people are in VMware in here? VMware? You got HyperV? HyperV? A little bit of both. Microsoft has their own version of NSX. Not nearly as baked, but NSX, one of the things I just learned, I didn't even fully realize this, was the VMware NSX will actually work on HyperV. They're actually going to run it across all of them. So that's actually a really good thing. But we got everything virtualized, either HyperV, VMware, Citrix, or KVM. That's really the ones we're kind of looking at, right? Everything's virtualized. The next big piece is going to be network virtualization. And I think, guys, that's where we're heading. You're going to be able to do so much with network virtualization. Has anyone heard the things with the network virtualization and the stuff that they're really looking to try to do? Yeah, so where it fits the most, well, first of all, I'll tell you, it's still expensive. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, right? It's still fairly expensive right now. It's not terrible, but it is, right? It's fairly expensive. But where it's really gonna become, I'm trying to see if this is the slide. I guess this is really one slide. Where network virtualization and kind of where the world is going is it's gonna give you really two important things to deal with. The first big thing is security. So most of y'all probably have a firewall, right? That's sitting out on the internet, right? You've got one guy that's doing the rules on your firewall. No guys? You've got your servers. When I worked at the AG's office, I was kind of like the one guy that did the networking of the servers and everything, right? And I can't tell you, they used to, when I left, one of my cohorts kind of laughed at me because he was like, dude, we went through and started cleaning up. And we found all kinds of crazy rules. But it was because I've been there for 6 years, so I had rules for each server. We decommissioned servers. Guess what? I forget to go in there and decommission those rules. It happens, right? Or whenever I created servers, the rules, that it take me a while to get all the rules into place and kind of get things kind of worked out and stuff. So where network virtualization, its biggest point right now that we're really pushing for, and again, we're talking still about a year away before it becomes a reality. It's there, it's starting to go mainstream, but I would say you're probably in that, what they call that top 10% right now of people that are kind of doing it. It's got to hit the 15% before it becomes what they call mainstream. So we're still a little bit away. But the security is probably the biggest thing that they're doing. And basically what's going to happen is within NSX or any of the other ones that are starting to come out, is they're going to start allowing you to have firewall rules per VM. So you basically be able to create in one spot all your firewall rules, but they'll be assigned, but I can't use this remote to save my life. They'll be assigned at a VM basis. Let me go back one. Yeah, so they'll be assigned, there we go. This is what happens when you do this. So it'll be assigned at a per VM basis. So when that VM is created, the firewall rules get assigned. When you delete that firewall, that VM, they go away. Now at first you're thinking, well, I can still do that on my own, right? But think grander scale, right? So right now, most of you guys, how many of you have 2 sites that you're running? You got 2 sites? Is it active, or you got active in DR?
Active.
So you're running production systems at both sites?
Yes.
Okay. And how easy is it to move VMs, HyperV VMs from one site to the other?
Well, I guess they're kept totally separate. So
Okay, yeah, so you don't, they are active, but they're kind of their own worlds, right? They're on their own islands. You active DR?
We're moving towards active DR right now. We still have 3 or 4 active servers. We're doing a domain migration. Once we get their domain, they'll be able to run our site.
Okay, so you'll have one active site and then one DR
One
site.
DR site, yeah.
So active, and we have an active DR as well.
Okay, so you got all, you're doing a three site thing?
No, I mean some of the active site, well, it's actually more active DR.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not really active.
Yeah, really, you're probably the closest of what it, usually when I really start talking active, I'm talking, you've got 2 sites, the VMs can live on either site, doesn't matter, and you can it'll just flow between them, right? And that's where we all want to eventually get to, right? Because there's nothing more than, as you guys probably know, you've probably made it active for either different reasons, but a lot of times it's because I don't want to spend the extra money and just have something sitting there dark and never get used. It seems like a waste, right? And I know you've got like the fire department, you have the sheriff's department that could be used in case one building goes out. But right now, it's hard to justify using both sides. So one of the big issues that's always been with doing the active is the networking. right? Storage has kind of fixed most of it, right? You know, whatever storage you got, you can put 2 different storage, and you can replicate whether you're using some product within storage, like within Compellent, we have like live volume with Equal Logic, they have sync rep. Some of them have the ability to do active-active sites within the software on the storage, or if you don't have that, you can use things like Zerto. That'll do it for you too, that are storage independent. And VMware replication will do some of it. They're moving a lot better with the VMware 6. They're going to start allowing you to do some of that stuff. So you get there, but the biggest issue still was my network, right? Because do you use this? Do you do a layer 2? Are you using the same IP address scheme on both sides? Yes? No? No? Most people aren't, right? Most people have, you know, 190, let's say for instance, 192.168.1 on this side, 192.168.2 on this side. It's not the same. So how do you take a server that's already IP'd, that everything is pointing at, and move it over here, re-IP it, and then still have all your users be able to go to it? And of course, you know, most developers would tell, well, let me rephrase, it's not most developers. Most true network guys will just use DNS. Right? That fixes that problem. And you're like, yeah, right. Sure it does. Half my stuff, the developers hard-coded the IP address to the servers and stuff. So, and, you know, I tried moving it, and it broke everything because there's hard-coded IP addresses everywhere. Even though they were supposed to use the DNS entries, they didn't. Right? So it's still a problem. So where things get really cool is if we kind of go down to this slide, is now with Virtualized Network, I'm sitting above that layer. So now I can basically have the same network on both sides. And the Virtualized Network is going to deal with that whole thing. So I can now vMotion a VM from one side to the other, and your users have no idea any of that's happened. And you can still do it with layer 2 stretching and things like that, right? There's ways for us to, in a better sense, hack the way. But usually most network guys will get really ticked with you if you start stretching layer 2 across multiple sites. Right now I can make my network guys happy because underneath it's still all their stuff, but on top VMware is basically, or HyperV is basically running a separate network that the VMs only know about. Now if I take that one step further to kind of tie in what I was saying earlier about micro-segmentation, about having the firewalls at per VM. Most of you probably have a firewall at both sites, right? Now you think about if you're trying to do this, the one next complication you're going to come to me with is, well, now I have to have firewalls at both sites for one VM. Well, that's going to be a management nightmare. Now with NSX, because I'm creating those policies within the NSX layer, that's tying into that's doing the firewalling. Now when I move that VM from one site to another, not only is the IP address following it, but all the firewall rules are following it to the other site. And I'm not opening myself up to any type of hacking or anything else. You know, that's a whole separate subject on hacking and stuff, right, and security. But I'm technically closing the door down on once. When I move that VM from side A to side B, I'm closing the policies on side A and I'm opening them up on side B. And all I did was have to vMotion or live migration. This is where things are going. Everybody's going to be doing this. I'm telling you, by the end of next year, this will be common knowledge, just like the SAN is today, right? Everyone fought the local storage for a long time. Now it's shared storage, and now it's hyper-converged. Kind of going back a little bit, but it's the same thought process. I want shared storage across all my stuff. This is where everything is going towards. Any questions on that? Most of your firewalls are going to have hooks into it for all this stuff too. Like I know right now with the NSX, there's Palo Alto and somebody else. I can't remember. I know Palo Alto is the big one, where they actually have hooks so that instead of using the firewall rules of NSX, which is not, they're okay, but you can actually use the engine of Palo Alto and have everything filtered through Palo Alto. So you do all your rule changing and your configuration at Palo Alto, and it'll automatically flow down to your NSX stuff. So, and I'm sure, you know, SonicWall, Cisco, everybody will have the plugins here soon. I think right now it's just whose standard are they going to rely on right now is kind of where everybody's kind of figuring it out. And I'm sure knowing IT, we'll probably select 2 or 3 and kind of stick with it. We're not kind of I think we've all been burnt on the one-trick pony over the years. So I think most of us have started to learn, all of IT as an industry has kind of learned to pick. You got the one big leader, and then usually you'll have 2 underneath it that kind of fall in, and everybody's kind of working with it. I always thought it was wonderful that they all picked Java as the way to program network interfaces and stuff. I want to thank whoever came up with that idea.
It's going away though.
Oh God,
Chrome's
going
pushing
fast
it
now.
out.
Yeah, all the latest ones I've been seeing have been moving to HTML5, which thank God.
Yeah.
It can't come fast enough as far as I'm concerned. I'm tired of seeing Oracle tell me I need to update my Java. I never wanted to deal with Oracle in the first place, and now it's like I seem to deal with it on a daily basis. So basically, the way most of the virtualization ones is they're going to run across any of your existing hardware. That's a little bit of a misnomer. Bless you. It will run across all existing hardware, but if you want to do, how many people, a lot of people here network guys? So you know, you the ARP table, right? That's kind of like the big deal. That's kind of what really network virtualization, they're virtualizing the ARP table. The big thing will be is that if you want to have that ARP table get replicated across to your hard network switches, so say you have some physical servers that you want to kind of be part of the whole thing for the IP address scheming, then you have to have switches that will be able to support VXLAN, which most of the new ones are starting to, but it's probably the only caveat I can tell you. Some of them will call them ARP table gateways or whatever, but it's basically the VXLAN protocol. If they support it, you can basically then allow, because the big issue is if you run like this 10 and 030.21 and you don't have VXLAN, that means that subnet is basically only going to be able to allow in your VMware, in your virtualization network, because there's no way for that ARP table to get down into your switches. So if you have VXLAN, that's kind of the protocol that they developed to allow that to flow between the two, so that you don't have that complication. How many people have physical servers left? You have a couple? You have a few? You have any? Is it all virtualized, or?
We're getting there.
You getting there? Yeah, most people are the same way, right? I think most of our customers are either 100% virtualized, or they're probably like 90%. They've got 1 or 2 that are kind of sitting there. Either they're super old and they just don't want to deal with it. As a good friend of mine calls it, he calls those sweating assets. You walk by and you sweat and hope that they don't break, because you probably couldn't bring it back online ever again. So you just pray that it'll continue to keep on working, but you don't want to put any effort into fixing them. But yeah, it's kind of where this stuff is going. And I'm telling you, the active sites, that's going to be the norm. So guys like you, you'll start to mesh those 2 sites more together, so you can utilize both sides.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that, but the existing infrastructure that was in place, when I came on, we'll make it a little challenging, but right now it's separate AD ports, so no trust in between, so you know, there's some hurdles there.
There's some hurdles, yeah. But the good thing is, if you know where you're going, it makes it easier, right? Because you can put your steps in place. And I think that's kind of, if you guys aren't looking at that, that's especially on the counties, with the floods, hurricanes, everything else, you know, whether it's climate change or whatever it is. You know, back this last December in Columbia, I would have told you that we didn't really ever have to worry about that stuff. And back in December, we were worried about one of our big dams breaking, and it would have wiped out the city. And it was close. It was 3 feet from topping the dam, which was considered an impossibility just 10 years ago. You know, everyone would have told you there's no way in heck that we would top this dam, because when they actually increased the height of the dam based upon what the Army Corps of Engineers forced them, and they didn't want to do it. They increased it, and they were like, yeah, they're just making us waste our money. And then sure enough, back in December, everyone was very thankful that the Army Corps of Engineers made the electric company spend, you know, $500 million to increase the height of that dam, because Columbia would have been off the map, and Sherman would have looked like, you know, a distant memory compared to what the Lake Murray would have done to Columbia if that dam were to burst. We had 186 dams, local dams in the city burst and wipe out places. Now, luckily, you know, I think we got lucky. I don't think there was too many municipalities that got hurt. But I know there was quite a few state organizations that their data all resides in downtown Columbia. So if it would have been, if that one building would have got wiped out, pretty much everybody in they'd had to build a wall around South Carolina, because we'd been all illegal citizens at that point, because all of our birth certificates would have been gone, because they're all computerized now. There is no other paper records of it. They're gone. And they don't have any backups, and there's no active sites. No one wants to spend the money on it. So, but it is what everyone's starting to think about. And I know a lot of people are talking about cloud, and that's how you're going to kind of deal with it. But I will tell you, this is also how you kind of deal with the whole cloud issue. If you're thinking about cloud, or people's talking about cloud, this is also how the cloud issue is going to be dealt with. Because now, once you get this stuff set up and get in it, you'll be able to move VMs not just from site A to site B, but you'll be able to go from site A to site B, or site A to the cloud, and then back again. And your users would never even know that you just went to AirWatch or AWS or Azure. They would have no clue that any of that's happened, because their IP addressing scheme would all still be the same. Any questions? Yes?
This might be a dumb one, but is this the exact same thing that we're talking about with software-defined networks?
Yes.
Exactly.
Well,
Okay.
yes and no. So software-defined networking is kind of like a marketing term to encompass everything. So this is one piece of the software-defined data center. The other piece that you'll hear people talk about is like the Nutanix, the vSANs, and then HyperV or VMware, however you want to do it. It's in all, you know, the thing that cracks me up is that whole software-defined and hyper-converged. But I can tell you right now, if you look at almost any of them, I'm trying to think of one, because really it's really the big ones. But if you look at like Compellent, EqualLogic maybe not, wouldn't really be considered, but like Compellent, really Nimble, Tegile, Tentree, all those guys, most of our stuff is straight up running on x86 stuff. Like you look at Compellent code, it's straight up BSD. The blades in the back that are the controllers, straight up x86 servers. You can pull them out and load Windows on. So software defined is kind of a play. You know, it's a pure marketing gimmick. But yeah, vSAN is, you know, when you talk about VMware, when they talk about it, it's vSAN, NSX, and VMware. If you're talking to the HyperV folks, you know, really Microsoft's going to say, really, you know, HyperV, and then SCVMM, so that you can do, it's not really NSX, but they do kind of more like what distributed switches are in VMware. They can do if you have SCVMM. They haven't really done the software-defined storage yet. They got storage spaces, but that's really DFS. Really SIFs, right? So, any more questions? I'm more the technical guy, so if you got technical questions, hit me up. I'm not really the marketing sales guy. I'll tell you which ones are BS and which ones aren't.
Basically all BS you, don't call me out on it.
Yeah, basically. You're not so bad. It's one of our, several of our AEs that are really bad about saying stuff, and you're like, that's, what? No, that's not even possible. Yes, you can do that all day long. No, you can't. It's not that magical. Don't say that shit. Jason will expect me to actually make that work whenever you sell it. All right, guys. If you got any more questions, I'll be in the booth for the rest of the day. And we give away a TV tomorrow. So if you come by the booth tomorrow and give your card out, we'll give out I think it's a 4K TV, right? We think. It's sitting somewhere. I haven't even seen it, even though it was in my hotel. All right, guys. Have a good rest of the day conference. No problem.